We're ready to go into session now. Okay, thanks. Okay, members, committee meeting will be recorded and broadcast throughout Parliament buildings and online. Continue to remind you about the enhanced new audio and video equipment in the committee room. So side conversations could be picked up by the microphones. Okay, I welcome Pamela here today as our clerk assistant. James, we had a couple of weeks there, so you're very welcome, Pamela. Nobody wants to stay with us too long, I don't know why. But anyway, any declaration of interest? Any additional declaration of interest? No? Okay, thank you. Agenda item 1, apologies. We have William Irwin. Any others? No? Okay, draft minutes. Agenda item 2 is the draft minutes of the 18th of April 2024. It's in your packs at pages 4 to 11. Have you any comments, or are you agreed that I sign them? Okay, agreed. Thank you. You can do it. Okay. Chair's business, members. First item on page 13 of your pack. I received an invitation to North Channel Wind to attend the Maritime UK Awards in Titanic Centre on the 5th of June. My personal view is it's a private company and I just don't believe it would be appropriate for me to attend. If anybody else feels different, they can say so, but that's my personal view just. Okay, happy enough?
Yeah.
All right. Tuesday past, the committee held an informal briefing and a Q&A session with representatives from Farmers for Action regarding their proposed draft farm welfare bill. They requested that the committee consider taking the bill forward. And I just received a very short email yesterday just to say thank the committee for giving them the opportunity to present. So I would suggest in relation to the proposed bill that we should have a discussion in private session and invite maybe the Rays here, maybe Mark and Susie or one of them, to come on and provide an overview because they did have a briefing paper in 2021 and maybe we want to just get a briefing from them to update if that's fair.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Pages 3 and 4 of your table papers is regarding the ministerial statement that was issued earlier in the week regarding the Dalradian public inquiry. Concerns were raised to DAERA by the Water Appeals Commission. Patsy McLone has asked that we request a briefing on this. Patsy's not here, but yes, Nicola.
Yeah, Tom, could I actually second that proposal then from Patsy? I think it would be important to get a briefing from officials on that. There's quite a bit of confusion over what actually is going on. I was actually at the public inquiry, the pre-meeting of the public inquiry, so I think it would be actually very helpful to hear from officials exactly what's going on and how this might affect the full public inquiry come September. So if we could request maybe quite urgently actually, because it's due in September, so we want to make sure it's all done.
Well, it's due in September, so it does give us that wee bit of time as well. I know with the summer break, but at least with a wee bit of flexibility, we don't have to have it next week.
Well, no, fair enough. But you know, we want to make sure that they're well prepared and that this won't affect the date of September. You know.
I'm sorry, John, did you want in this? No?
No, it's okay.
I'm sorry, apologies. So you're all content that we have the briefing?
Yep, content.
Okay, thank you. Members, we had requested a briefing from the Minister in the next month or so to update on progress of strategies and plans. The Minister is available on Thursday the 6th of June from 9:15 to 10:15. Are you content that we start the meeting early to accommodate this? All happy? Okay. Means a longer journey from us from the west, or an earlier journey from us from the west, but anyway, we'll remind them of that, I'm sure. Okay, agenda item 4, matters arising. There's a few issues just wanted to pick up. Pages 15 to 17 of your pack, departmental response dated 19th of April in reply to our letter of the 12th of April requesting further information on what consultation the department carried out on the LCM on pet abduction. It was led in the Assembly Business Office on the 19th of April 2024. Department informs that when the pet abduction bill receives royal assent, it will require a commencing order to introduce the provisions into Northern Ireland. Prior to the introduction of the order, the Department intends to engage with key stakeholders in the matter. The Department anticipates that the introduction of the legislation will be universally popular. All content? Okay. Thank you. Members, pages 18 to 21 of your pack is the departmental response dated 24th of April in reply to our letter of the 12th of April requesting further clarification around the ammonia monitoring stations. So just that was a query to the monitoring period for an additional 3 years. Happy with note that correspondence, or is there anything further?
Yep.
Okay. Matters arising, pages 22 to 25 of your pack, departmental response dated the 24th of April in reply to our letter of the 19th of April regarding the proposal to produce a statutory policy statement on environmental principles. Members, still not much the wiser as to what that all means, what a statutory policy statement is. It's not around the principles that's contained within it. I'm still curious as to what the effect is of a statutory guidance document. But
Chair, I have asked researcher Susie
Oh, have you?
Cave to look for examples. Yes.
okay,
Thanks.
be happy to note it for now. Like I don't think there's anything in the principles that we objecting to. It's just what it means. Okay. Pages 26 to 28 of your pack, the departmental response of the 24th of April to our letter on the 19th of April regarding the amendment of 2 legacy EU CMOs, the Fruit and Vegetables Aid Scheme and the Agri-Food Information and Promotions. I think we were asking just why it was taken forward in that mechanism, but they have explained it there, so you all content?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Refer you to pages 6 to 8 of your table papers, departmental response of the 29th of April in reply to the letter requesting clarification on the Irish Grown Wool Council head in the British Wool Marketing Scheme Amendment Order, or how the proposal will impact on the role. So I think it explains it there. Declan, was you raised that? Are you content with that?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, agenda item 5 is a briefing from the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs, rethinking our resources measures for climate change and a circular economy in Northern Ireland. You can find papers in your packet, pages 29 to 162 of your pack. We welcome Rachel Hook and Colin Breen. You're both very welcome here. So we would ask you to give up to 10 minutes of a presentation, and then hopefully you'll be able to receive some questions.
Thank you very much. So good morning everyone. I'm Rachel Hook and just start by thanking you all for the opportunity to come here today and speak to you about this. So you'll be aware of the landmark Climate Change Act that has set the direction and ambition for environmental protection in Northern Ireland and tackling the ever-increasing impacts of the climate crisis that we now face. We've committed to achieving net zero by 2050, and specific to the work that we're going to talk about today, the Act also contains a requirement to achieve 70% of waste recycled by 2030. In Northern Ireland at the moment, we have a linear economy where we are taking, making, using and wasting, and that's unsustainable. We need to reduce the amount of waste that we generate, the amount that we send to landfill, and we need to manage our resources more sustainably. And we can do that by increasing the quality and quantity of what we recycle and moving to more closed-loop local recycling systems. And doing that will have benefits not only in reducing the greenhouse gas emissions from the waste sector, but it will also have significant economic benefits to Northern Ireland and will help drive that transition to a low carbon circular economy. So there were amendments to the Waste and Contaminated Land Order in 2020, and they introduced some other targets as well for recycling of municipal waste, and they also extended the definition of municipal waste to include any organisation that produces waste which is similar to that which is produced from households. And it did set targets of 65% of municipal waste recycled by 2035, with interim targets of 55% by 2025 and 60% by 2030. And in addition, it included a target of less than 10% of waste to landfill by 2035 as well. In 2020 then, we launched a discussion document on recycling, and that was really for us to begin to explore how we could achieve these targets. Building on the responses to that, we began to undertake stakeholder engagement in 2021. To date, we've done over 20 stakeholder engagement workshops, and that has led to the development of the consultation that we're here today to discuss. So the consultation was launched by Minister on the 7th of March. It did open for a 12-week period. We did receive some stakeholder feedback and several letters from councils as well to ask for more time for them to be able to complete their responses. So the Minister has agreed to extend that deadline to the 27th of June, given an additional 4-week period for completion. The consultation itself is split into 2 parts and covers 26 proposals. There's 104 questions to respond to, and we are encouraging everyone to respond via the Citizen Space platform. In order to make those 104 questions more accessible and allow everyone the opportunity to respond, we have been advising respondents to only answer the questions that they feel are relevant to them. Don't have to respond to everything. So I'll briefly cover what the key proposals are within that consultation. And I think it's important to note at this point that the consultation doesn't deal with all aspects of the circular economy. So, for example, bioeconomy is not covered here, but we do know that there's work going on elsewhere in the department in relation to that. So firstly, for household recycling, we want to reduce the amount of waste that we send to landfill and try and get the materials that are collected for recycling in better shape. So we're proposing to reduce the capacity of the residual waste bin by 25%. Currently, most households in Northern Ireland have 120 litres a week, and that's normally collected fortnightly in a 240 litre bin. This proposal would see that capacity reduced to 90 litres a week, and councils would be able to decide whether they move to a 3-weekly collection for that, which would obviously have significant cost savings, or retain a fortnightly collection but move to a smaller 180 litre capacity bin. Hand in hand with that then would be enhancements to our recycling services. Our legislation no longer permits commingling as an acceptable form of separate collection. This was removed from the waste regulations. So we have set out several proposals in relation to separate collection of recycling, and these range from a full multi-stream recycling service where each material would be separated by the householder at the curbside, to a twin stream system where councils would make the decision whether to collect glass or paper separately to reduce contamination within the commingled bin. And it's glass and paper that have been identified through our research as being the materials most at risk of contamination within the current system of commingling. If we are to move to a low carbon circular economy, it's really important that we reduce that contamination as far as possible to enable those materials to be reprocessed locally in closed loop systems. In the household section, there's also proposals to enhance organics collections, in particular food waste, and to provide free liners for food caddies to all residents in Northern Ireland. The cost then of implementing these policies will be dependent on the outcome of the consultation, as there's a few different options laid out, and ultimately the Minister will have to decide what the best option for Northern Ireland is. We did publish a regulatory impact assessment alongside the consultation, and that has put costs in the region of £49 to £80 million. You will find a section on funding on page 23 of the consultation document, and I should note that there is no committed funding at present for this. We do have new legislative drivers coming, such as extended producer responsibility, and we do anticipate that that will help to cover the cost of implementing some of these changes in the longer term. Part 2 then of the consultation covers recycling from the non-household municipal sector or businesses and organisations. There isn't an obligation at present in legislation for businesses to recycle, but we do know that many businesses choose to do this, but we know that also that there's no standard or consistency across the region. I think what we're really keen to ensure is that recycling is simple, both for the person doing the recycling and for the business that is introducing the recycling. So the consultation proposes to collect a core set of material which mirrors the core set of material already collected from households. And what that means is if you're recycling at work or at school or at hospital, you're recycling in the same way as you do at home. And that new definition of municipal that we covered earlier will bring into scope around 57,000 businesses in Northern Ireland, and it will require a step change in the way that businesses recycle. We don't have any direct financial support planned for businesses, but we will provide training, guidance and behaviour change materials. It's anticipated that that will cost in the region of 18 million. And the reason that we're not planning to provide any direct financial support is because our modelling has identified that large and medium businesses would be able to see significant cost savings by implementing recycling systems. There could be a small cost burden for small and micro businesses. However, we do set out options within the consultation for alleviating that, such as shared containers or the introduction of business waste recycling centres. Other proposals outline cover exemptions to separate collection, known as TEEP, and enforcement and compliance. And I don't have time today to cover those in detail, but we would be happy to take any questions on those issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Richard, it's a very interesting concept. Now, clearly there are issues at the moment, even within council areas where you've the historic councils, and one of them have one system and the other has a different system, and it is hugely difficult. So I do applaud the attempts that we're making to try and resolve that, or that you are making. Just explain the costs. Maybe you said there were a number of options laid out, and I do understand that until the consultation's over, there's really no idea of definitive costs. But explain the costs in general around the issues that will cost businesses in particular,
yes,
but also departments,
yes,
or councils.
Well, for businesses, I think for the larger businesses and the medium-sized businesses, if they are not recycling, they're paying money to get rid of the waste that they create at the moment. If they move to recycling systems, they absolutely will be able to save money by doing that. As I said, the small and micro businesses, because of their size and the amount of waste that they generate, it may not be cost effective for them to set up separate recycling services. So we are looking at best practice across the rest of the UK. Wales, for example, have just introduced business recycling, and further afield as well, to kind of see what ways we could overcome that. And one of the options is looking at helping councils to develop business waste recycling centres, which are like the household recycling centres, but only businesses could use them, and they pay a nominal fee, an annual fee to do that. For the household waste then, the costs there cover, as I said, it will depend on the option, but they'll cover the purchase of new containers, they'll cover the purchase of, the behaviour change and, the campaigns to kind of let everybody know that, communicate those changes, and for the residual waste, as I said, if councils choose to move to that 3 weekly collection, there is significant cost savings for doing that. But if they choose to retain the fortnightly, then there is the outlay for the new containers as well, the 180 litres. So the costs, if you have a look at the impact assessment, the costs are all laid out, including the savings that councils can make as well through implementing the different options.
Apologies there, I didn't notice, and I can't see where the estimated or the target for Northern Ireland is in recycling. I did see actually England, Wales and Scotland's targets there, or what they're hitting at the moment. What's our target at the end of this?
The recycling rate
Yeah.
target, yeah. So the Climate Change Act sets the 70% target, and then you have the waste and contaminated land order. If we were to implement these changes, we could achieve a recycling rate of 74%.
Okay.
That would be 62% would be the maximum that the household sector could handle.
Why
and
is
then
that? Sorry,
businesses.
why is that the maximum they could handle?
A range of different factors. A lot of it at the minute is due to the recyclability of materials,
Okay.
and that will change over time naturally. And also public acceptability and actually getting people on board to recycle can be quite challenging as well. So the modelling that we have done has kind of shown that the highest that the household would reach using this system would be around 61%, whereas the business sector could reach as high as 84%.
Okay. Finally, for me, the issue of some councils allowing glass into their recycling bins, was that a decision solely by the councils, or did they need some sort of authorisation from central government to allow them to do that?
No, that's a decision solely by councils. They can decide to collect glass either at the moment in the commingled bin. That's fine, or they can choose to collect it separately.
So I'm very conscious, obviously, there are so many bottle banks around, and if people would use those,
Yes.
it's much better than putting them in the recycling bin because of the contamination.
Glass is a huge issue for contamination.
No, I
yeah.
understand.
Yeah, huge.
Okay, thank you. John Blair.
Thank you, Chair. Colin, Rachel, good to see you both, and thanks for the presentation. I don't particularly want to look at things retrospectively, but it stands out glaringly obvious to me from the report that we have actually started to do slightly worse in recycling than we were doing. The figures in the presentation show that in the year 2019 to 20 we achieved 51.9%, but the following year that decreased to 50.7%.
Yep.
So we're far from on track
Yep.
in with regard to recycling. I'm mindful that in my own area there are great examples of the circular economy, where glass is recycled, collected curbside in one part of Council Borough. It's taken for breaking down in my constituency, and then can be brought back and used again by a business in my own constituency. But in another part of my constituency, glass isn't collected at the curbside and disadvantages anybody who doesn't have access to a car, for example. So the questions from that are, is there a declared intention to try to secure that consistency across council areas and within council areas? And also, where are we with departmental assistance to achieve that? There's a fund that was helping councils roll out systems for separation of
That's right, yeah.
recyclable waste. Is that still there?
Yeah.
And is that likely to be expanded as this process unfolds?
Yeah. So you're talking about the Household Waste Recycling Collaborative Change Programme, which was a £23 million fund that councils could apply to improve their recycling systems and their household waste recycling centres as well. That is still ongoing. It's recently relaunched. I don't know if you remember that Minister Poots decided to amend it slightly so that the councils had to match fund by 50%. That has reopened again now, and I think that there's a couple of applications just awaiting approval.
Yeah, one in your
Yeah.
council area. So I think the one thing I would say is we'll have to wait to see what the budget situation comes. But our intention is certainly to fund good projects for the circular economy.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's key to deliver
Absolutely.
on the required
And
figures.
at the moment the department does not have powers to compel councils to make, we cannot make councils do recycling in a certain way, so it will be through funding and things like that, those sorts of mechanisms that will be able to get councils to move in the right direction.
Okay. The second question, if I may, Chair, the businesses element of this, which has been a major challenge thus far. I have been approached on numerous occasions by small, micro and start-up businesses. Is it possible that some help could be sent in that direction at some point, and I know that might also depend on the budgetary position, but at least could the education and assistance programme being talked about be used to help councils, help businesses try to do that? You mentioned sharing
absolutely.
waste management systems, for
Yeah.
example, but there's a piece of work required to get businesses to there, and councils is probably the vehicle to do that.
Exactly, and I think when I talked about the £18 million that we would be putting aside to help support businesses, a lot of that would be focusing on the small and micro businesses, and would include people going out, boots on the ground to these businesses to kind of do audits and things like that, and help them to figure out the best and most cost-effective way of introducing this. And it's great that Wales have just recently introduced that, because we can look at the the learnings and the developments there, and take that away and help inform what we're doing too.
Yeah, okay, look, that's very helpful, thank you.
No problem.
Rachel. Nicola Brogan.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks Rachel and Colin for your briefing there. I think this is very interesting actually. We're obviously making steps in the right direction, but I know this obviously is going out to consultation now, but what type of engagement have you had, or what kind of response do you expect really from the public? I'm thinking first of all from that reducing the capacity. Is that something you think that the public are going to be concerned about, to be reduced to 90 litres a week?
Yeah.
In your own from your own experience of working in this field, do you think we'll be concerned, or have you engaged with councils yet, and what are their kind of responses so far?
As I said in my introduction, we've been engaging since 2021. The proposals that are within the consultation have largely been co-designed with the councils. The engagement that we've done with them has been extensive, and we've also engaged with industry as well, like the reprocessors, the sorters, the collectors, and again, the feedback that we got from them has also helped to inform the options. I think waste is always a divisive issue, isn't it? It's something that people really do get invested in, and public acceptability will always come with challenges. But experience has shown us that it can be done effectively. If we look back to 2017, when the food waste regulations were introduced, all councils moved together with that. They all introduced it at the same time, and there was a national messaging and communications campaign. And the feedback from them, the councils on that, was that approach really worked. Everybody knew what was happening. It was simple messaging. It was easy to understand. So I think that if we were, implementing these proposals, we would seek to do something similar again. As I said, most of the waste sector have been briefed on these proposals. There is going to be people that are unhappy with the direction of travel, but at the same time, we have to balance that with our statutory obligations and the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the sector. So it is a bit of a balancing act, but I think we just have to keep coming back to the fact that we do have these statutory obligations, and we need to achieve those.
I'll just add a couple of things, Nicola.
Yeah.
So the residual bin, actually, the capacity of it, it's way more than most people need, because we've done a few studies over recent times. The amount of food waste in the residual bin is still between 25 and 33%.
Yeah.
Our last two, that's way too much.
Yeah.
That is stuff that could go to anaerobic digestion, stuff that could go to composting and create a product. Instead, it's risking going to landfill or elsewhere. And also, I think the most recent 48% of the residual bin was recyclable as well.
Yes.
So that leaves very little of the residual bin residual waste.
Mm-hmm.
So the aim would hopefully be, with a restricted residual capacity, people think more about what they're putting in there. Yes, there are definitely some items very difficult to recycle that need to go in there. Nappies are a very good example of that. But there's far too much going into residual bin at the minute that should be going elsewhere and being valorised. And I think that's, if you can sort of change that behaviour of not be the black bin or grey bin or whatever being the default, that's where we really want to get to, where the other bins are the default and you only use your black or grey bin as a last resort.
I think that's a sensible enough approach, and I think that maybe there still is that educational piece there to make sure people are using it the right way, and maybe reducing it is the way forward. So it'll be interesting to see how people respond to that there. And that actually leads me on to my next question, Colin, about instead of like waste collection, waste prevention, and actually encouraging people, not especially when it comes to food waste, not to actually to be more mindful of waste prevention, whatever, you know, to be instead of like using it, throwing it out, whatever. Have you any kind of plans around that there? Have you done any scoping in that there?
Yeah, well, I suppose that's it's something I started my work in Deer on waste prevention, so it's an area I really, as did Rachel actually, came after. So it is something, it's the top of the waste hierarchy for a reason. So we established a few years ago the Northern Ireland Resource Network. They look at reuse and repair, and we have helped fund Fair Share in your constituency, I believe, John, for food redistribution, for looking at ways of matching food that could go to waste with people in need. There's, I think the stat is about £1,000 of food is wasted by every family every year.
Yeah.
That's and the cost of living crisis. So we are doing an awful lot in waste prevention, and it's really where we try to prioritise things. But like for example, implementing the circular economy, by the time you get to recycling, you've almost lost. Yeah. It's too far down the waste hierarchy. It's necessary and always will be probably for quite some time. But yet, waste prevention is definitely where we want to be driving. We have our waste prevention programme in place since 2020. We'll be reviewing it again next year and looking to build upon that. But there have been some really good successes here in terms of waste prevention, but not enough. We still waste too much. We still put our waste in the wrong places, and we still aren't using enough of it locally. Probably everybody here has a good example of a reprocessor in their constituency that could be using more, like Encirc, for example, could be using a lot more glass. They actually have to import glass while we're exporting commingled glass sometimes. Yep. That's not good. Huhtamaki, they're in a couple of places. Again, they're sometimes having to import paper while we export poorer quality paper. Those things shouldn't be happening. It's as simple as that. Even on a personal level, it just shouldn't be happening. Never mind on a policy level.
Well, there's another just kind of educational piece in that there too, isn't there? Yeah. But that's very helpful. Thank you both for that there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks. Patsy McLone.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you. Just looking through some of your stuff there, one bit that I'm intrigued in is the enhancements to food waste collections and maybe the provision of bags for people, for consumers and the likes. The very first thing would be, presumably those bags would need to be biodegradable.
Yeah,
that'd
they
be the first
are.
thing.
Yeah,
But the wider issue is, I don't know how you were there, not Tom, but a number of us, Declan, you were there, visited a plant in Dungannon which takes the food waste and turns it into energy. So I'm just conscious that I'm sure you're not acting in a silo in these matters, but to make sure that there's connectivity within the department between what you're doing and what the likes of those businesses are doing very effectively, because they're turning the food waste into gas, which is going right into the network, and it's of benefit. It is truly a circular economy and waste and all. So I'm just wondering who's joining up the dots, or maybe you already have joined up all those dots to make sure that proper advantage is taken of food waste collection right through to food waste usage.
Yeah. So at the minute, all of the food waste that's collected from households goes to Natural World Products, where it's composted in vessel composting, and then that's sold as a soil enricher. We are looking at how we can introduce food waste collections from businesses already. Food businesses producing more than 5 kilograms of food waste a week have to present that for separate collection. We are proposing within this consultation to extend that to all businesses. So then there would be opportunities for anaerobic digestion from that. Councils are currently in contract for their food waste. Once that ends, again, they would be open to then move into anaerobic digestion if it was feasible for them.
This is the food waste directly sourced from, say, the likes of restaurants and that, is it? Or, but how do you tie in? Just trying to think this through. The brown bin isn't all food waste. How do you tie in your consumer? Because there's a considerable amount of food waste there. Well, whether you call it food waste or just food degeneration. So how do you tie all that in?
Well, if we were to move to a more anaerobic digestive model, we would need to look at changing the household model to do separate food waste collection, which is one of the proposals within this. We have recently done some modelling and some compositional analysis. Now, bearing in mind it was only 2 council areas, so it was quite small. That did show that the yields are very similar whenever it's garden and food mixed, or if it's separately collected. So you're not going to get a massive uplift in your recycling rate if you collect food waste separately, but yes, the end markets could be slightly different. If you wanted to push anaerobic digestion more, so that you could inject gas, biomethane into the grid, then it would have to be separately collected, so we'd have to look at moving to that sort of model.
Sorry, just one wee final clarification there. The enhancements that you see to that food waste collection, what's can you give me a flavour of the,
so the enhancements
there?
then would be the likes of moving to separate collection, but I don't think at the minute we can demonstrate that it would, as I said, significantly increase the recycling rate. So I suppose it's one of the areas that is maybe less clear, on the direction of travel. We already do collect a lot, and I think if we could get that 30% that Colin referred to out of the residual bin and into the food waste, that would be a really good starting point.
Not to mention how much money it would save everybody, because some of that residual is going to landfill or energy recovery. Both of them are costing more than food waste going to anaerobic digestion or composting, and you're getting a product at the end of that.
That's right.
With energy from waste, you are getting a product in some level, but the calorific value of food waste is very low, so you're not getting a lot of energy from it. But the councils are well tied in and realise the value of food waste, either for composting or anaerobic digestion for energy, for gas, as you said. So
gas and, sorry if I should say, fertiliser as well. We saw that from going onto the ground. So, okay.
We probably have a problem with maybe, we could have too much digestate out of the amount of food waste we have, because we're quite a nutrient-rich country. So there is that to be balanced as well. But the composting side of things can remove sort of horticultural peat as a compost as well. Yes. So there are a lot of benefits to getting more food waste separately collected or collected with garden waste and then properly reprocessed.
Right, John, did you want one brief point on that?
Very briefly, and it's linked to this. Chair, thank you. I'm wondering then, is there any effort either already or might there be as a result of the consultation to better streamline or apply consistency to how councils are dealing with residual waste?
Yes. So we have at the moment, we're developing the climate action plan. One of the proposals that we've put forward for that is looking at how we can divert biodegradable waste from landfill. I think at the moment we have about 140,000 tonnes of biodegradable waste still going to landfill. So that would be one measure that we would look to put in place. We would also look to maybe potentially ban untreated or unsorted waste going to landfill as well, which is a big issue. And then obviously with the reduction in capacity, really then all that should be going to landfill is the bits that cannot be recycled or cannot be dealt with, and really that's the only other option for them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Michelle McElveen.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I'm just curious as to what's going to come out of this consultation, because obviously the title of part 1 are proposals to improve commonality, but yet through the presentation you've still talked about flexibilities for councils in their approach. So I mean, are you proposing eventually to bring forward sort of legislative proposals that will introduce bans or be quite restrictive in the approaches? And I'm looking really at what sort of timeline you're looking for any of those options.
Well, timelines, I suppose, that's a very tricky one, because obviously if we have to introduce legislation, which I think we will have to do, that can take up a significant portion of time. But at the same time, I'm very conscious that we do have these statutory targets that are time bound, with the first one being 55% by 2025, which is next year. I think there is only so far that the department can go in terms of the powers that it has to be able to compel councils to do, for all of them to do the same thing. And we do appreciate that there are nuances in each council area. So whilst we are looking towards councils collecting a common set of materials, having a common capacity for each of the, the residual bin, the food waste and the recycling, there probably will have to be a level of flexibility built in to allow councils to make decisions based on how they feel their residents would respond. I know that already councils have expressed that, some of them have expressed that there would be no public acceptability for a 3-weekly residual collection, and that they would want to maintain that fortnightly collection but with the smaller capacity bin, whereas some other council areas feel that the 3-weekly is it can be done and the cost savings are worth it. So we are very much working with the councils to try and achieve a broad consensus, I suppose, on the way forward.
Of course, I have to say that the policy decisions will ultimately be for our minister.
Yeah.
Okay, obviously that still sounds quite confusing, and I suppose the challenge that we have for public messaging, and John probably highlighted that within his own council, never mind with neighbouring councils as well, just the challenges that there are with one area being very different to another. And I know obviously within my own council, I suppose we have tried to be quite progressive, but at the same time it has not been without its challenges, and particularly around the issues around HRC, where it's quite restricted with the manner in which people are monitored, even with sorting their waste. You have talked about the commingling. And I suppose it's really about trying to get a better sense of the difference between the likes of glass in particular, because I have done the journey of following the glass and seen the benefit of that. But I'm not sure people probably just quite understand the difference in value from some glass that's been put into your blue bin and one that's been put into, maybe in our area we have a separated system. So maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah, I think that the behaviour change element of it is difficult. We definitely need to do more to try and help people appreciate the differences between what happens to a piece of glass that's put into a commingled bin as opposed to something that's separately collected. But we have experience of doing those kind of joined up communications. It worked really well with the food waste regulations, and we do have a plan to kind of, depending on what the outcome of the consultation is, obviously, we do have a plan to kind of roll out a national communications campaign that would be able to demonstrate to the people of Northern Ireland what happens to their recycling and why it's important that we improve the quality of what's being collected. So that answers your question.
Look with interest as this progresses.
Yeah,
so
thanks very much.
Okay, Michelle. Declan McLear.
Thank you. And I want to reiterate what Patsy said there. I did attend that visit in Dungan as well, and I think hydrogen may be another was created too, Patsy, that circular. That I think hydrogen was one of the other products that came out of that, and it was really intriguing, where all of the waste from the restaurants and food outlets in Dungan go to that one plant and create such renewable energy sources. I suppose one of the questions I want to ask is, there's some great suggestions here and very interesting, and obviously it will require the public to buy into it. So, do you have any campaigns to build on that educational piece that Nicola referred to, and even for schools as well, to get young people and children bought into it as well?
Yeah, so we already provide a significant amount of grant funding to ENGOs to help with behaviour change. We work quite closely with RAP. They have helped us to Recycle Now, Food Waste Action Week. There's several campaigns throughout the year that we sort of help fund. And we would build on that, but there would be a bespoke campaign for Northern Ireland based on whatever option is decided upon. That has already been costed and a plan has already been established for that. So we're really just awaiting the outcome of the consultation to figure out what the direction of travel is before we can start to roll that out. But yes, as soon as that is that decision's made, we'll start then to slowly introduce that. In terms of schools and things like that, we will tie in with the Eco Schools programme, Keep Northern Ireland Beautiful run, and get that message out, because I think it is really important to get the children informed as young as possible, so that they can build these habits and carry those with them throughout their lives.
Well, that's great, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Right, Declan, thanks. Tom Buchanan.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose one of the big problems is so much that has to be recycled or put to landfill and so forth, and the cost that is to the government and so forth. Has any work been done, or what work has been done perhaps with the producers and their package, the people that does the packaging and all that, to help reduce it from the very foundation up? If we can get it reduced from there, then that's going to obviously have a big bearing on what goes into landfill and what has to be recycled and so forth. So what type of engagement's going on there to see if that can be reduced from the very foundation up?
Well, we will have extended producer responsibility being introduced in 2026, and that will then put the onus on the producers to pay for the packaging throughout its life, right up until disposal. And then the money that the producers pay for that will be passed on to councils to help them build infrastructure for recycling. But also there are other legislative pieces that are aiming to design out waste. So, for example, a plastic packaging tax, which I think it means that you have to have 30% recycled content, at least 30% recycled content in any plastic packaging that's produced or put on the market. And there are other interventions as well, such as the deposit return scheme and so on. So there's a lot going on in that space. There are lots of things that need to be taken into consideration. So, what the right materials are, the recyclability of the materials, and particularly end markets for those materials as well, making sure that the market's not saturated with one particular type of packaging. I think also we have... mine's gone blank. I forgot what I was going to say, but I'm sure it was important. But yeah, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things coming down the line that are designed to kind of move those things that are difficult to recycle. So, for example, like the flexible plastic packaging, like the films that go over the top of grapes or bread bags, that sort of thing. They will have to be collected from the curbside by 31st of March 2027. So that's one example of something that's not currently recyclable that will move into that recycling sphere in the next couple of years. And it's very lightweight, but it's very voluminous, so it'll be really good to get that out of the residual waste as well.
Yeah, for example, you buy a mobile phone. That's in a box 3 times the size it needs to be for that. So, if we can get that reduced away down, then that's going to have a big impact.
Yeah.
And big bearing on
designing out waste prevention. That's it has to start at the top of the supply chain, and never actually, as Colin said, make it as far as recycling. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Tom. Just final one from me, and you've actually touched on it to some degree, Rachel, there, and Colin mentioned earlier about the move of some products from residual into recycling, and you mentioned, I think, the soft plastics there. Yes, from the 31st of March next year. What else is there that can be immediately, or fairly quickly, sorry, I shouldn't say immediately, but reasonably quickly without too much effort moved?
Certainly the flexible plastics would be one.
So I suppose there's an issue around multi-layer plastic materials with lots of different things. They can be very, very quickly changed to a single material and made easier to recycle. A move away from problematic plastics like PVCs, silicone.
I mean, the only way you can do that is obviously get the manufacturers.
Yeah, and they are doing it now. I visited Heinz recently, and I see they've just won an award for it. The cap of a squeezy tomato sauce bottle now, it used to have 7 or 8 different plastic materials. Now it's a single material, non-drip cap, and it's very easily recyclable, whereas before it just was never recycled. And so, the producers or the manufacturers are realising that they need to change, and they are driving an awful lot of this as well.
Okay.
So, and they are to be commended. You know, like Heinz, for example, created that and didn't reserve any intellectual property, so anybody can now use it, just because it's going to save a lot of plastic and make recycling easier. And so, you know, I would commend any company that does things like that, and for the good of all of us.
Yeah, and I think that we're actively looking at different materials all the time and new research. Textiles would be a really big one that we would probably seek to try and get into the recycling stream at some point in the near future. The issue with that is that it's not easily recyclable. But there are plenty of reuse markets, for example. I know Cookstown Textile Recyclers, we went to visit them recently. They're doing great work in, collecting all of those textiles and redistributing them across the world. So, we are actively looking at all the different materials and the latest up-to-date research.
And I suppose what I said again, getting all the stuff out of the residual bin that's already recyclable.
Yeah.
That is the major problem. There are always things that are going to be difficult to recycle, but the amount of stuff that's in that residual bin that could be recycled or gone to compost, gone to AD.
I think it would be really helpful if there was a standardised products right across the board in all councils.
Yeah.
That was recyclable and wasn't, because it does cause confusion.
Yeah, so part of this consultation is to establish a core set, and that is a core set of material that every council will have to collect. It will be set out in legislation. So you won't have a situation where maybe one council's collecting glass and the next one's not. It will have to be consistent across all 11 councils.
Right.
Okay,
well look, Rachel and Con, thank you very much. Very interesting, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more about it as we move forward.
And if you want us to come back and talk to you once the consultation's closed, then please just let us know.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, members, we'll move on to agenda item 6, which is the SL1 on dangerous dogs, designated types order, Northern Ireland 2024. You'll see the information in pages 163 to 175 of your packs. Clerk's memo is at 163 to 164, and department papers 166 to 175. Department proposes to make the above named statutory rule under the powers conferred on it by Article 25A, 1C and 8 of the Dogs Northern Ireland Order 1983. That's the 1983 order. The rule will be laid before the Assembly under negative resolution procedure, and it is anticipated that it will come into operation in June 2024. Purpose of the SR Dangerous Dogs Designated Types Order Northern Ireland 2024 is to designate type of dog known as the XL Bully to the list of dogs bred for fighting, or to have the characteristics of the type bred for that purpose. From the 18th of June 2024, the effect of this designation means that an XL Bully dog owner must ensure that they comply with the safeguards that relate to the designated dogs. These include ensuring that the dog is kept on a muzzle and lead when it is in a public place. It also requires that all owners of XL Bully type dogs do not breed from it, do not sell or exchange ownership of the dog, including giving it away, and do not abandon the dog nor permit it to stray. Members, any comments on that? I know there was a member's statement or the ministerial statement on it. I'd just like maybe a presentation on this to we get clear, because I think there are queries around, do we just keep adding dogs to the list, or do we try and influence other parts of legislation to make sure that owners have some responsibility as well? So are you happy that we get a presentation on this? Thank you, appreciate that. All right. Agenda item 7 is the SL1, the Agricultural Student Fees Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2024, pages 176 to 256 of your pack. Department proposes to make the above named statutory rule under the powers conferred by Section 5A 1 and 2 of the Agricultural Act Northern Ireland 1949 as amended. Rule will be laid before the Assembly on the negative resolution procedure, and it is anticipated that it will come into operation on the 1st of September 2024. Proposed SR will amend the agricultural student fees regulations, which sets the level of fees payable for undergraduate and postgraduate higher education courses delivered by DERA at the College of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, CAFRE. The SR applies an inflationary increase to the higher education student fees at CAFRE. Members, we have Zita Hale here with us. Maybe Zita, if you want to come to the, just in case there are any queries. So, members, have you any queries for Zita? I think it was Anya.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Zita, I took a quick read through a few reviews last night. The original review happened in 2018.
The actual policy review was kicked off in 2018. The policy change was implemented from academic year 22-23.
And that was implemented, I'm assuming, when the Assembly was down then, at that stage?
No, the Assembly was up and running. Again, it was Minister Poots brought in the change.
Implemented then at that stage.
Yeah.
Chair, this is an inflationary rise, this SR is in relation to. Zeta, due to the inflationary rise, would there be any increase in bursary support or grant support off the back of that inflationary rise?
There's an automatic increase in bursary support for people, for students coming from low-income households who have to borrow a loan. So it automatically would increase because they get 10% bursary off the amount of grant, or the amount of the fee that's higher than the minimum rate. So it'll carry through.
And that would be paid out, I'm assuming, by
it's student finance, and it's
yes.
an automatic transaction to those students. So when the cost rises, they get a pro rata increase in their bursary as well.
And has there, to your knowledge, Zita, has there been any impact at all in relation to the uptake of students coming in for courses?
Not really that we can see, because numbers are still strong. You are going to get variations between different disciplines, so it's other factors that impact that. And what we would, if it was going to impact enrolments, you would see a fall in enrolments across all disciplines. That hasn't been the case.
See, I was going through it there, I made reference to the equality impact, and it said there were minor impacts across some Section 575 groups, but they were not deemed to be materially significant. What groups did you detect a minor impact on, and how were they screened out?
Well, with students, you're going to find that they tend to be, you're going to have a lot more younger students, in terms of mitigating out, the mitigation is the student support that is available through loans and grants and bursaries. And we also introduced a widening access and participation plan when we did increase the tuition fees as well. So that's about developing additional supports to students to address any inequalities.
Yeah. And you didn't detect any real needs, the real needs impact was carried out?
Yeah, and again, it's about 70% of our students come from a rural background, but that has to be taken in context against all rural students and urban students in Northern Ireland. So we're raised to the same level as everybody else in Northern Ireland, so there's no differential impact.
Yep. Right, Declan. Anybody else, any queries? Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
So, are members relatively content? If so, I will put the motion that the committee has considered a proposal by the Department to make a statutory rule, the Agricultural Student Fees Amendment Regulations 2024, and agrees that it is content to the Department to make the rule. All agreed?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, Declan, apologies, the last agenda item on the Excel bullies, I seen you'd wanted in, I didn't realise that.
The fact that you're getting the presentation
is okay?
We'll cover it all.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, members, agenda item 8 is Budget 2024-2025. There's written evidence from the Department. Refer you to pages 257 to 261 of your pack for a written briefing from the Department in relation to Budget 2024-25. Department confirms that as part of the process they submitted bids for new requirements of 95.8 million of resource DEL and 155.2 million of capital DEL to the Department of Finance. Details of the bids are set out in tables 1 and 2. 25th of April, the Executive agreed allocations for departments with DERA being allocated a total of 577.3 million resource DEL and 95 million capital DEL. However, these allocations include earmarked allocations which are for specific purposes. Department advises that it is now working through the implication of these allocations and will provide further updates to the committee in due course, including an oral briefing which is likely to be in early June. Any comments at this stage? I know it's very early and probably the department only trying to get their head around it and settled, so he's happy that we wait for the further information.
Wait for the briefing, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 9, Department written briefing on the introductory update on Farm Support and Development Programme briefing. Refer you to pages 262 to 275 of the pack for a written introductory briefing from the Department's Food, Farm and Rural Affairs Group regarding the Farm Support and Development Programme. Oral briefings are being scheduled for later in May or early June. Members, any comments so far, or do you want to wait for the briefings?
Or briefings, Jerry.
Oral
Yes.
briefings, yeah.
Yeah. The changes coming in are so widespread, and we definitely do need it. And these are a good synopsis.
Yeah.
We definitely need to be able to dig down on some of this.
And I think the difficulty, members, as well, is that obviously while the top level or the strategic overview of them was set by the previous Minister and Department, obviously that's subject to I'm assuming, to some amendments, or not amendments, but I'm sure the current Minister and Department will want to set maybe their rationale around some of the aspects that maybe wasn't included in the previous. So that's just my view. So I think it's important that we get those oral briefings to get our head, try and get a head around them all. All happy enough?
Yeah, Chair,
Sorry,
can
Michelle?
I just ask,
Yeah.
did we request this briefing, or was it offered to us and officials not offered alongside it? Because it's a bit like the XL Bullies, the fact that it came as a briefing but not actually with witnesses coming seems a bit odd,
Yes,
I think moving forward, I think whenever we do have substantial pieces coming to the committee, that we should also have the officials available, even if we don't need to call on them.
I think we had, obviously there's been talked about for a couple of weeks, Michelle, as well, about whether the previous Minister's decisions were binding or whether there was flexibility. So I'm assuming they're maybe reacting to some of that as well. I don't know.
No, I appreciate that. It's just about, it's just in relation to, the relationship between the committee and the department and the production of papers. And it's just more of a principle as opposed to just on this particular topic.
Sorry, go
Chair,
ahead.
I did speak through the DALO about that at the time, that it maybe wasn't the totally sensible way around to do this sort of written briefing without officials being willing to appear on that day, because it just brings up the questions that you've just raised. But I think there was particular reasons that there needed to be further work done before the briefing, full oral briefing could be given, and this was an introductory written briefing.
Declan?
Thanks for letting me back in.
Sorry, were you finished, Michelle?
Oh, sorry, Michelle.
Sorry.
See, given the scale we're talking about, and see when we're working on the farm work programme, like this nearly needs to be this needs to be very little other briefings on the same day, because like there's each section is here is almost a briefing in itself. It's huge. This is huge.
I think on the day we're looking at, there will be an overarching briefing and then a briefing on one particular one, and then we'll probably have further briefings after that.
Okay.
I think that there's a lot of people from the farming and rural communities who are they're trying to work out what's coming down the tracks, and they're watching us to try and get answers for them. So
I think, Declan, there'll be a few of the schemes will probably be fairly self-explanatory and won't take a great lot of explanation, whereas there's some of them will require a lot more detail on what's required of farmers for it. So I do think you're right. So if we get that overall strategic briefing maybe and get something along with it, and then we can do maybe another number on another day, if that's reasonable.
Yep, split them up. Yep.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item 9. Oh, sorry. Sorry, agenda item 10 is correspondence. Refer you to correspondence in your packs, page 277 to 278. And then the full correspondence is in 279 to 621. Just to draw your attention to a few items, starting, excuse me, departmental letter dated, correspondence dated 26th of April 2024, starting at page 279 of your pack. Committee is asked to note that the Ivory Act extension of meaning of Ivory Transitional Provision and Miscellaneous Amendments Regulation 2024 is to be extended to Northern Ireland. Any comment? No? Don't know how much ivory we have in Northern Ireland. But anyway. Members, there is correspondence from the Business Office dated the 18th of April regarding the Locks Agency Annual Report and Accounts for 2020. Starting at page 286 is quite a hefty document. Members, any queries?
Just ask,
Yeah.
I was off a couple of days and wasn't sure whether or not we had a briefing from the Locks Agency. Would it be something that we would want to maybe explore, just given the document that's come to us?
Okay. All agreed?
Agreed, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, members, refer you to correspondence from Northern Ireland Mushroom Growers Association dated the 18th of April 2024, detailing the challenges and opportunities facing the sector, starting on pages 480 in your pack. They have offered a briefing, members, either here or to visit a mushroom farm. I'm happy with the briefing. If we're all content that we take a briefing here?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Correspondence from an individual starting on page 482 in the pack. This regarding the complaint against the department that we had discussed on the 11th of April. Are you content to note the further information at this point, bearing in mind that we are waiting for legal advice that we requested? Happy to note?
No.
Thank you. The 10th report of the Examiner Statutory Rules is at starting on page 484. Are you content to note? Correspondence from the Northern Ireland Commissioner for Children and Young People, dated the 23rd of April 2024. It's starting at page 493 of your pack. Any comment on that, members? Just put it in there for comment. No? Okay. Correspondence from the Clerk to the Committee for the Executive Office dated the 19th of April, starting at page 495 in your pack regarding the scrutiny of common frameworks. The Executive Office agreed to take stock of progress of the common frameworks and will write to all statutory committees to ask which common frameworks have been scrutinised and which are the committee expecting from the Department for scrutiny purposes. The Legacy Committee of ERA scrutinised 9 of the 15 common frameworks relevant to ERA and produced a committee position report on these. Of the remaining 6, one is zootechnics, is not yet published. However, it will be for us to scrutinise the remaining 5 that are published. As mentioned in the planning meeting last week, the Clerk is liaising with the DLO concerning these 5 common frameworks, and they will form part of the forward work programme in the near future. So are you content that the Clerk and the TEO or replies to the TEO as we have outlined? Okay, great, thank you. Members, has copied correspondence from the House of Lords EU Affairs Subcommittee on the Windsor Framework to the Minister of Biosecurity, Animal Health and Welfare dated 25th of April, starting on page 496 in your pack. Members, this is an issue regarding the animal welfare transport issue. I know it's something I raised as well because the query in this is if it can be extended to Northern Ireland, because I think there was an MP asked if it could be extended to Northern Ireland, but the initial answer from memory was, and again I'm going a bit on memory here, was that it probably couldn't because the EU had direction over us in Northern Ireland. But I think this letter is now asking if it can be again. Now, I raised the issue here, and we did get correspondence back in relation to the EU legislation or regulation that's planned to come forward, or at least a consultation on it, which would impact on us here. DAERA were somewhat dismissive. I can't remember the exact wording, but they indicated that as far as they were concerned there was no consultation around it, whereas I understand there was. There's on this particular piece of correspondence, I think we can only note it because it's an internal one, whether that Lords Committee is asking the UK Minister if it can be extended to Northern Ireland. But on the broader issue, I think we do need at least a written briefing from the Department of Agriculture, if that's fair.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the ones we're getting caught between the UK and EU legislation on it. Okay, happy enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chair, and
Yep.
also, hopefully we'll see then a copy of the response from that minister to
the Lords.
the Lords on
Okay.
on whether they are anticipating any.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll
new-
copy us in because they seem to be quite good
Yeah,
at copying us
they
in
are, yeah.
correspondence. Yeah. Refer you to correspondence from the Department dated 26th of April 2024, starting on page 498 of your pack, notifying the Committee of the Department's intention to publish the outcomes of the consultation on Northern Ireland 2030 and 2040 emissions reduction targets and the first 3 carbon budgets, and seeking views on the Climate Change Committee Advice Report. That report is called The Path to a Net Zero Northern Ireland. Summary paper is at Annex A and a more detailed paper at Annex B. Are you content to note that at this stage, or have you any further comments? I think it's just for noting. Okay. Agenda item 11 is the forward work programme. Pages 11 to 12 of your table papers. Happy to accept that along with what we included today around the Locks Agency and the more detailed or responses on or briefings on the support schemes.
Yep.
Happy with those? Okay, members. Any other business?
Nope.
Okay, next meeting is in this room, 21, on Thursday, 9th of May, 2024, 10 a.m. So members, we have a private session just regarding